So, well, actually, that's going to be a little bit of repeating what Christine said, probably in a little bit more detail. Hello, everyone. I'm Martin Lechner. I'm CTO of Wikitude, and I'm also chairing the ARML 2.0 standards working group within the OGC. ARML 2.0, I'm not sure if that was covered today, is augmented reality markup language, basically a standard to describe and interact with augmented reality scenes. And you're going to hear at least a little bit about ARML 2.0 within this presentation, because that was the base for our interoperability experiment. Basically what Christine just mentioned, there are a couple of augmented reality browsers out there, not interoperable. Everyone was living in their own world. And with this experiment that was actually demonstrated in Barcelona at Mobile World Congress in March this year, that was the first time that these browsers were actually made interoperable. A little bit of background on this experiment before we jump right into it, how we made that possible, and well, basically how it works. What is an AR browser? First of all, when we talk about interoperability between AR browsers, it's interesting to know what an AR browser actually is. What we consider an AR browser is a native application, usually, that is able to, to interpret the user input, the real world, to sense the real world, and to be able to receive content from a particular source that a developer created, and then is rendering this content on the mobile device of a user. So for us, this is kind of an AR browser, an application that offers a content interface. People can upload content, and the browser renders it. So kind of the difference between an AR browser and a specific AR application is that an AR application has a specific use case. So you're implementing this application for one particular use case. The content usually is kind of fixed, or at least is coming from one particular source, but not like a web browser which can render multiple pages. So AR browser can render lots of AR content across several verticals, across several use cases, kind of a general application. So that, for us, is an AR browser. And now, the interoperability between AR browsers. Let's talk about the situation as it was before the interoperability experiment, and actually before we launched our AR interoperability AR browser versions. So basically what we had is a content provider that is providing content, the end user that is consuming content, and the AR browser ecosystem actually enabled the developer to upload content and the user to consume that content. The essence of it was that everyone had his own content format that a developer could use to create and upload content to the AR authoring environment. That's what we call the kind of the back end of the AR browser, where it gets the content from. There was a particular format that was defined proprietary by this particular AR browser vendor. And basically, if you want to run your content on multiple AR browser platforms, you had to create the content as many times as the browsers that you want to support. And so we wanted to change that situation. Well, first of all, why do we want to change that situation? Basically, there are several stakeholders in the AR value chain that, for whom this is important, for whom the interoperability itself is important. First of all, for AR browsers, for vendors like us, why should we care? Well, first of all, we know that lots of people actually have one particular AR browser that they want, that they regularly use, and we understand that probably content that they want to consume has been created in another AR browser environment, and so they cannot consume this particular content. That's not ideal for us and for the entire industry, and we, of course, want the industry to grow because, that's how we make our money as well. So that's why it's important for us that users are actually happy with the AR browser application itself, and that's why we need as many users as possible. And if users are actually held back to use augmented reality by these content silos, then this is not ideal for us. And why do the content publishers care? Why should content developers actually be aware that interoperability is good? Well, that's pretty clear. I mean, one particular AR browser has a certain user base, but if you combine all these AR browsers, then of course you have more. So we kind of did a little number game, and we kind of estimated the number of users that we have, and we added Layar, Wikitude, and MacIntyre, the three browsers that were actually taking part in this particular experiment, and we counted that we have over 50 million users together. And if you divide 50 million users by 3 by just targeting one particular browser, then this number would be, of course, a lot less. You can do the maths on your own, how much that would be for one browser. So basically, that's the essence of it, right? I mean, the AR browser vendors, the end user in the end, and also the content publishers benefit from interoperability. And that's why we actually sat together and we wanted to make that possible. Okay, next question, how? As Christine was already mentioning, we sat together in Amsterdam. We talked about how we could, how we envision a system like this, and this is what we came up with. Basically, this architecture looks very similar to the one that you've seen before, the situation that we had previously, with the exception that we added 2 new boxes at the very bottom of this architecture diagram. Each and every browser still has its own AR content format, his own publishing environment, and on the other side, of course, the AR browser. Everything remains the same. The important thing that we added is something that we call CARIF. That's Common Augmented Reality Interchange Format, if I got that correctly. Thank you. Which basically means that there is now one particular language that each and every browser understands and uses this as a interchange format, as kind of a format that both the AR browsers and the content in the backend actually understands. So what that means for developers is that you are still implementing your experience in one of the AR browsers' language. So you don't have to change anything. If you like Layar's approach better than Wikitude's or Junio's, you can still use that. And on the AR browser side, it's the same. I mean, you can still use your AR browser of choice, whatever you want. But the important thing is that when you want to consume content that has been created in a different AR browser environment, basically what happens is when you want to consume that content, previously the AR browser was contacting his own publishing environment directly. Now, basically what happens is that it requests a CARIF document from this particular other augmented reality publishing environment, and we basically implemented the CARIF support in our systems. And that's this additional box here. So that this CARIF language basically enables us to, well, run this entire interoperability experiment. So this is basically, the diagram that I was just talking about. The Layar format, the Wikitude format, the Junio RL format, they are still there. But what we did was kind of implementing translators between the common AR interchange format and the particular formats of the browsers. So now everyone understands CARIF and can convert it into the languages that we are already using. So we limited the changes that we have to do in our own environment, and still we had interoperability, which is good. So basically CARIF, as I was mentioning ARML 2.0, CARIF is a subset of ARML 2.0 of the OGC standard. Basically, we just used the features that we wanted to support in this AR interoperability experiment. And that's how it looked in the end. Basically, this is just a kind of a quick snapshot that was done in Amsterdam. We have Wikitude, we have Layar, we have Junio, and all of them are rendering the same content. I'm not sure from which authoring platform this content was actually coming, but as you see, I mean, all the 3 browsers are rendering the same content. They're not rendering it in the same way. I will talk about that a little later, but at least the content is the same. As I said, we demonstrated this experiment during Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. and we agreed that by the time that we have AWE right now, we will actually launch this support of the interoperability in our browsers, and that's what happened actually. So the changes that we made to our systems basically was just these two main blocks. On the publishing environment, whenever a user is now submitting content to one of the AR publishing environments, he doesn't just get this particular link or the thing that he actually needs to run it in the AR browser of this particular platform. He also gets an AR interoperability link that he can then use to kind of publish it on a web page, and this link is supported by each and every browser that is installed on the mobile device. So you will see this particular window over there when you click it on an Android device, for example, and then you can select what browser you actually want to open if you have multiple installed. So an example of this interoperability link that you will get when you submit content is the first one is Junaio, second one Layar, the third one Wikitude. So things like that you will get with this particular ID identifying your content. And on the AR browser side, what we had to do is basically just supporting these interoperability links. So basically when you click on this link in a web page, then the AR browser will react on that and will open up and will show you the content. Demos, if you're interested, I mean, Christine was already mentioning, we can do that afterwards, definitely. We also have, I think Wikitude and Metaio has booths. I'm not sure about Layar. No? Okay. But at least we can definitely show it at our booths. But if you're interested, I guess it's more convenient, just stop by at 4:30, 5:30? 4:30, yeah. After the next session, we'll do demos. Okay, cool. So, where are we now? Are we all interoperable and we can just leave the room and be happy because we don't have to talk about it anymore? No, unfortunately, because there are lots of different types of interoperability that we have. We have data interoperability, we have visual interoperability that it kind of looks the same, the content that we actually want to present. Also 3D models are important here. We have image recognition, we have user interaction animations. So it's kind of, there are lots of different types of interoperability. And what we have covered so far is data interoperability for geo-augmented reality. So this is one of the building blocks for interoperability. It covers lots of scenarios that people are right now using. We think that it's around 80 to 90% of all the scenarios that are currently running in AR browsers are covered by this AR interoperability experiment. But of course, there's still some way to go to have full interoperability. And the question is, of course, how much interoperability do we really want? And how much should be left to the browser to render stuff or to, do interaction and stuff like that. So we actually have an active discussion going on what the next steps will be after the interoperability session.
And you should
yes?
Please join that conversation if you're interested. Starting at 6 p.m. tonight over in room 212 is the next meeting of the computer vision-based AR interoperability. So the people who are specifically involved in this we'll be conducting our meeting, and you're invited to come and observe, participate, and give us your input in terms of what you would like to see.
Exactly, thank you. Next steps, basically, first of all, talk about where interoperability makes sense, and then execute the make sense interoperability, whatever we define. And also, of course, the more AR browsers that we can get to implement this AR interoperability experiment or this link basically helps the industry. So again, if you know someone, if you're doing an AR browser on your own, just stop by, talk to us. We'll be happy to help. Everyone's welcome to implement one of the basically CARIF support. So for more information, either talk to us, definitely come to our booths, or visit this webpage. It's Christine's webpage. She's done tremendous. Our webpage. Well, it says Perey.com, so it's yours. And she has of course supported us a lot to get us on the same table and talk. So she was really helpful, and I think she's going to continue to be helpful in this process, as is everyone else, of course. So take a picture of that and find some additional information. Otherwise, that's my talk for today. Thanks a lot. If you have questions, feel free to ask them.
Does anybody have any questions so far?
Yes?
Okay. Yes. Who did you point to?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
So who's the moderator? You are. Okay.
My question is about the browser support, and so I'm not sure if I missed it, but is there an AR open browser on the roadmap that could play the other?
That's the next session.
Oh, sorry.
That's the next session.
So the answer is yes.
Yeah.
A question about the linking. Is it restricted basically to these three content providers? What would keep you from opening up linking to any web resource out there in the world that is compliant?
And basically, all we need is this service to allow opening up an AR browser. So that's behind this link. You will open up an AR browser. That's AR:// is a protocol that AR browsers now should support. So there's no real content source. The content source is then the next part of the URL because it identifies where to fetch the content, actually. So we do have kind of a schema. When you implement this link, then you have to follow the guidelines how to access the content. So, I mean, we do not restrict that. All we need is AR browsers that support this schema and behind the interop.something.com services that actually deliver CARIF files. And that's all we need. And then we're happy.
So you could do that in your browser.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of issues. Once you open it to any URL in the world, then of course validation services become more important before you start executing
Of course.
a half-compliant data source.
Yeah.
Lots of issues left.
Yeah.
Bill?
Will the CARIF format be opened up so that people if they get a point of view provider, they can just send that up themselves?
It's already open, actually. So it is. We do have a document, which will also be found on our webpage. So CARIF is open. In theory, every one of you could go to that webpage and start implementing.
The one that has the proof of concept URL, that one has a pointer to a document that describes the architecture, and in that document is a page and a half that describes the CARIF.
Yeah, it's a simple format because I mean, data interoperability. We knew exactly what fields we want to support. Yes.
I saw in one of your slides three different renderings of the same content.
Yeah.
I would have a problem with that if I was a content creator because I don't know how my content is going to look like.
Yeah. You're very welcome. You're very welcome to join because this is exactly the input that we need. What makes sense and where people actually say, you know, this is useless because it would ruin my business or whatever. So.
They are not going to look like the web page. It's going to look the same on Explorer, on Mozilla, or on Chrome.
Yeah.
But in this case, they could be totally different.
Right. Yeah. So please join us for our session. Input will be welcome.
Anybody else? All right.
Okay.
So more on this front. Stay tuned. Thank you very much, Martin.
Thank you.